So it's drain down time again at Beausoleil. We drain down every couple of years. The main reason for doing a drain down is so that we can sort through our fish. So we're down the shallows, and 2 years ago we got Pete and his digger down here to do a big old clear out. And we can see that the silt has come back and there's more leaf debris fallen. But what's interesting is that when I go for a paddle in some areas, it's definitely shallower. What happens is when you remove silt from a deep area of silt, the silt overall flattens out and it gets less overall. What's also interesting to see is that this area in front of this rock here, there was a hole and it is not there. Lakes change all the time. Just because the carp were creating a hole one time, 1 year, doesn't mean that they're always going to be there feeding away. So a couple of years ago there was a branch there that I pulled out and there was a clearly defined hole in front of here. Yeah, this is where this hole was, and now we've just got 4 or 5 inches of gloopy muck. As I look out across here, the lake bottom's got simpler. I can still see feeding holes that are around rocks, and they've still got holes, craters around them. Where the overall silt level is reduced, the lake's just got a bit more simple. We're getting into some thicker stuff here. I think what it means is the lake has become less spotty, certainly in this area, so you don't have to be as accurate with your rig presentation, but you've still got to use, you know, a light lead and a presentation that's going to work on this silt. If you're putting it out by a rowing boat or a bait boat, you don't have to overthink it. If you're casting into this stuff, especially in shallow water, then you have to be a bit more thoughtful about how you do it. So I'd already got the impression that the overall silt level had reduced, because I used to put the fight track along this bridge, so I'm quite familiar with walking across here, and it was always really hard to walk. But because this large area of lake was dug out really thoroughly by Pete, it was all scraped down to the bare clay, then the silt that was here has simply been redistributed over the freshly scraped clean bottom. There's nothing. A couple of centimetres. It's amazing the difference. Yeah, that was awful to walk through. Not anymore. Well, we got some lovely weather for it today. We had a good day yesterday. We just had the 2 trees down in the end, and we're doing this to reduce leaf fall. If we have too many leaves fall in the lake, then we have too much silt and it's bad for the oxygen levels. So we need to strike a balance, but we've made loads of progress on silt removal. Uncovered loads of grey clay, blue clay, brown clay, and we're really making good progress actually. Hopefully today won't shut us down. We can continue to work in these conditions and yeah, see what more good work we can do. Snowy conditions or a hard frost is actually really good, really healthy when we're in drain down, when we're in a partial drain down anyway. The fish are going to be absolutely fine. The fish are up in the deep water up the other end. They've got at least 1 metre of water at the moment, so no issues for the fish whatsoever. But what the cold is going to do is going to kill any parasites and nasty bugs that are in the silt. So those are bad for fish health. So anything that nature can help us with to kill these things is a good thing. So it's actually really good timing that we've had a hit of cold while we're in drain down. The other good news is that I've managed to keep the fire going, so any trees that we drop today, we can basically burn the branches as we go along. This tree is literally falling in as I stand here. Extra snow load, and snow's heavy. It's just gone on the branches and the tree said, I've had enough, I'm going in. And I've got to be really careful with this one that I'm stood next to, because that could go any second as well. Despite the evil weather, we've had a very successful day actually. 4 trees dropped, and every single one of those trees that we dropped has got just porous, got holes in it, so they were going to fall over at any point. We've made one hell of a mess. The whole zone is an absolute bomb site, but that's all going to get scraped flat and grass will grow back over the top. So in 6 months you pretty much won't see where we've been. So it has made a massive difference to the area. There's going to be loads more light. Got a lovely view of the bridge. It's going to look phenomenal, especially when we've finished planting enough. So if you've ever wondered what it's really like to live the dream, then the reality is you're going to be spending days, weeks or even months up to your neck in stinking mud, pretty much picking up shitty sticks wherever you look. You will find aches and pains in parts of your body that you didn't even know existed. But you know what? I wouldn't be anywhere else doing anything else. I love it. Right, first bit of rig debris, and we've got a bit of rig tube. And what's on the rig tube? We've got a very old inline lead on the tube, no main line, no rig. So the main line's pulled through that rig tube and been safely ejected. Someone's left the plastic insert in that inline lead. I always remove the plastic inserts from an inline lead because it's far easier for the inline lead to fly over the tubing and be safely lost. Luckily the main line just pulled through that rig tubing, so there was no problem at all, but it would have been easier and safer if that plastic insert was not there in the first place. So I'm just pinging my rake across here and I'm looking for main line. Oh yeah, here we go. Right, what we got here? It's a deadly D-rig made with some decent mono. What on earth has gone on there? And now that's not safe at all. This is a classic example of how not to set up a running rig. I think they've got some heavy duty mono and they've crimped over it. You've got a homemade leader covered in rig tubing with a great bulky load of rubbish over the top. You should never do this. This is just completely wrong. Now luckily whoever set this up was using a ring with a big enough hole in it, and it has passed safely over the top. It's not a death rig, but the good news is I've got it out the lake. There was no lead attached. It was not a tether rig. It was just overcomplicated, unnecessary, and a bit pants really. So I spent a good 10 minutes raking around this bridge and I found two rigs. Two rigs in 2 years around a hazard like this. That's absolutely nothing. Since we moved over to heavy, 25-pound big game, 25-pound armour line and barbless hooks, the number of rigs that we're finding it's just massively reduced. And for me that's mainly down to the use of barbless hooks, because barbless hooks, as soon as you release the pressure on the hook hold of a barbless hook, it drops out. So this strange item is an aerator support pole. This is what holds the aerator in position when it's running. This entire area was scraped really clean down to the clay, and I can absolutely see that there's 10-15 centimeters of silt. An aerator draws in silt from the surrounding area and concentrates it. So when I go over here, nice clean bottom, and there's a big ring of silt around this area. It doesn't pay to fish too close to the aerator. Give them 4 or 5 meters. Yeah, it's lovely around here. So this game is all about using materials that you've got to hand. Mud and wood have been used as construction materials for many thousands of years. So I thought, why not? So what we're doing here is we're building an improvised wood and mud bund. So this bund is going to stop the silt sliding off the bank straight back into the lake, which is where we don't want it. I've used retaining bunds in the past, more complicated affairs with big long trees and bash. This time I'm improvising with just a few rondelles of wood that I'd already had cut. So this is actually an area of the lake that we've never been able to dug out before. So the fact that we've been able to get a machine in here and get some muck out is a real good thing. Where he's dug it out in a couple of years ago, it's much less. We can see a dramatic reduction in the overall level of silt. And every single scoop that he can get out is going to make our lake healthier. And a healthy lake means healthy carp. Now obviously we've still got some silt. That's 35 centimeters deep. And that's the sort of stuff that really sucks onto your boot. But if I go over to this big rock here, lovely clean hard bottom, big hole been excavated all around the rock. So if you are fishing a lake where there are a few rocks, if you know where the rocks are and you can fish short of them or to the left of them, you know, it's precision fishing. There's no way that you can make a cast into this area and get it right. It's really difficult, to be honest, to do it with a bait boat. Even if you have got one with GPS, it's just not accurate enough. This is a rowing boat job. Find the rock, pull back a metre, drop the rig, and it's going to do a bite, isn't it? So I just came across a lovely area here. Now, there's no way that you can fish here because we're right next to the bridge. But if I can feel something that feels kind of just lots of small stones, some grit. This area looks like this because it has been polished clean by the carp. Carp have got incredible filtration systems. They're sucking and blowing. They're eating food and non-food items. And the result is this polished, clean area. Even if you can't get out there, if you can't prod, if you drag a bare lead across something like that, you will absolutely feel the difference. So I'm really happy with how this area is looking. 2 years ago, this was covered in 6-10 inches of horrible muck, but what we've got now, we've got this nice, fine, sandy, gritted structure. Before it was kind of pot-marked with lots of little feeding holes, and the carp absolutely love this kind of environment, and they've cleaned it far better than it was after the digger was in. So this clean gravel strip, it's about 5 metres wide. It's all bang hard, got some bigger rocks in here, and then there's this big depression in front of these rocks. Then the strip continues along up to the bridge and actually beyond the bridge. There's absolutely zero issues with presenting a rig here, no problem at all. Another mussel to rescue. It's only when we start to get to this point here, which is a good, well, it's 10 metres away from that rock, that we find some thick silt again. So about 7-8 metres away from the margin, there's actually a nice shallow depression here. And I'd certainly rather sit a rig in this hole rather than up on top of those banks of muck there. Finding subtle changes of depth like this in a lake when it's full of water is really quite tricky, especially if you've just got a leading rod or a marker rod. Ultimate feature finding tool is to actually get in a set of waders, jump in the water and go for a paddle. And if you ever get the opportunity to do that, your mind will be blown because it feels very, very different than what you could possibly imagine. In previous years, this was all really thick, gloopy silt, and there is some thick, gloopy silt, but it's still further that way. It used to just be a kind of series of big cat holes down here, but now I've seen a lot of carp activity here this year, and yeah, I had no idea it was that clean. So for the last 2 weeks, I've dropped the lake to the same level as what we did for the netting 2 years ago. But last time we struggled to net all the big catfish. So the plan this time is to drop the lake another 30 centimetres. And I'm going to initiate that process today. We've then got 24 hours to lose another 30 centimetres of water, and hopefully that's going to enable us to catch all of the fish this time. The thing about carp lakes is, you see, they are not flat. There are holes in which these fish hide. There's rocks, there's all sorts of troubles out there. And when we pass the net across, if there's a hole in which the net passes over and the fish stay within, then basically they don't get netted. The more water we get out, the better the chance we have of getting that net to drag those holes clean and get all of the fish. Right, let's do a fly through underneath the fir tree here and show you what a gnarly rocky place that is. That's the big carp cave. So every 2 years we visit this hole, and within 2 years they've excavated another 15 or 20 centimetres and exposed a load more roots. They are just absolute eating machines. They are excavating the bottom. JCBs with fins, I call them. Wow, that's madness, isn't it, what they've excavated? I have no idea how this tree's still standing. So it's a really good example of what's happening here. You've got a load of roots here, and you've got a rock that is quite near the surface. And as the carp excavate all of the soil away, these rocks fall through. And look, those are the fallen rocks there. So I'm down here at the end of the island, and whenever I'm doing tours with guests and stuff, I always warn them about the nasty things that are lurking on the end of the island, ready to cut you off before you know it. Because there's big boulders down here, there's bits of trees sticking out, there's all sorts. I'll normally find some kind of rigs lost in this melee of branches and stuff behind me, but I've had a good look actually and I can't find any rigs today, so that's a good thing. Yeah, a load of mussel tracks along here. What have we got here? Oh, surprise, surprise. It's another long bank stick that's been used as a prodding pole and then dropped. When you're doing prodding work, one thing is guaranteed: if you do enough of it, you will at some stage drop a prodding pole. So we're down in the pêcherie, and normally what we've got in this groove here is a grill, and it's not there, it's down there. It's literally been smashed in two, and this is all by the huge amount of water that's come through this year. It was old, it just wasn't strong enough to take the force, and this is a problem, because this grill is what stops fish from my lake going down to the lake below. And there are regulations for this. So we're having a custom made grill built for us, which is going to fix this problem. So the plan with the new grill is that we've got fine bars. There's a 10mm gap down the bottom, then it goes up to a 3cm gap above that, and then if we get a lot of flood water, that flood water is just going to pass cleanly over the top. Well, the new grill is working very well for us. Just got to keep it free of leaves. When we're in drain down, you get little roach. There's definitely some roach in here at the moment because we cleaned it out yesterday and we caught a few. Little roach gets swept over the board, but that's what the fine mesh on the bottom of this grill is going to stop. Now, obviously, really tiny fish are going to go through that grill without any problem, but there's absolutely nothing we can do about that. So what is a pêcherie? Well, the lake is in front of me there, so the water's flowing over the weir board, falling down the monk. It's then flowing out of a big 600mm tube that goes right underneath the middle of the dam wall. The water then flows into this concrete bin and then passes through the grill. And it's the concrete bin that is referred to as a pêcherie. I can't stop scraping for too long because the level's rising so much I'm going to get a bootful if I'm not careful. So pêcheries were invented many years ago. It was the monks that first started to raise and grow carp as a food source in lakes, and they didn't have nets or anything, so the only way to actually harvest the carp was to remove boards and let the water flow over it into the monk. This is why the monk is called a monk, because the monks invented it. It's what holds the water in the lake. Once the water flows into here, any fish that are in the lake get washed over and they're contained within the pêcherie. So that's the origin of a pêcherie. So although we're not raising food for the table, having a pêcherie is still very useful. It helps me drain down the lake and sort out the fish in a controlled manner. I'm only cracking the weir boards open 4 or 5 centimetres, so all the specimen fish are going to stay in the lake where I want them. This is where we're going to net them. But if some of the smaller fish flow over into the pêcherie, it's not a problem. So I wanted to show you an area of the lake that we haven't been able to clean up for 10 years. And it runs all the way along here, round to the aerator, and then joins up with home swim. All this margin along here that's been dug up, and all the spoil has been scraped up and then put on the bank. Now, we've already done this once on a big scale 10 years ago, but this stuff builds up over time, and yeah, there was a lot of muck here, to be fair. But what it's exposed is a lot of really nice white kind of grey light clays. And look how sticky that is. It's lovely stuff actually. Carp absolutely love this stuff. Very, very healthy for the lake, all that stuff. So what we don't want is this muck. So what we've got here, the water table is so close to the surface here that water literally comes up out of the ground. You can see it flowing there. Occasionally we'll get some air bubbles trapped in there. You can see it if you come in close here. Can you see the sediment being disturbed in that little bubble hole there? That's water literally coming up out of the ground. Groundwater, pure fresh groundwater. So there's springs all over this lake. So Point Hay, which is just a few metres in front of me here is quite a popular place to fish, and anglers get quite excited when they see bubbles coming up here at really kind of close quarters. They think that there's a carp in here feeding. I have to dispel that myth, unfortunately. It's not a carp, it's just bubbles, it's gases being released by the groundwater as it comes up through the layers of the sediment. So yeah, nothing wildly exciting, but it's important to understand the infrastructure of a lake and how it actually works. The other thing that's clearly visible at the moment are these brown streaks, and that's iron oxide, which is a fancy word for rust, and it's nothing to worry about. Iron oxide is, you know, a part of nature. We need iron, carp need iron, so it's nothing to worry about. Here's a rich seam of iron oxide coming out here, and it literally just comes out of the ground. So you can see where I've been walking in this clay, and that white plume there is the clay sediment that's been released. That's brown silt sediment that's been turned up. So if you ever see a kind of a plume of white like that, then it's an indication that there's a clay spot there really. This silt will migrate into this scraped lower section and it will all kind of level out. Yeah, one step too far, could be game over for me welly. Right, I've just spotted a new carp hole here. So I'm stood in this hole here and I was just wondering, well, what have the carp been so interested in that they've excavated this hole in this area? And you can see quite clearly it's absolutely covered in these tiny little breather holes, and I suspect that that's bloodworm breather holes. And this is carp food, this is what carp eat. And here we have a bloodworm. There we go, bloodworm living on a mussel shell. This year I really want to get some lime into the silty areas. By applying lime directly to exposed silt, it does a much better job. Now we're using a special agricultural lime. So Chaux-Vif is 92% oxide de calcium, which is basically calcium oxide. And this does multiple jobs. It's going to kill off all the parasites that reside within the silt. And this is why we prefer to use Chaux-Vif as opposed to just something like Siltex or any other product like that, which is basically just superfine ground up chalk. We have to be super careful when we're using Chaux-Vif, so I'm working to a prescribed program that's been drawn up specifically for this lake by a professional. This is not the sort of stuff that you want to be flinging in randomly anyway. As well as killing the parasites, it's going to seriously accelerate the rate of breakdown of the leaves and silt that we've still got left. Yeah, we've been doing some dig out work, but as you've seen in the netting, yeah, there's an awful lot more silt in there that we'll probably never be able to get out. We can only do our best. And we've always applied lime annually, but we haven't always been able to apply lime directly to exposed silt because of time pressures. The lime treatment program has to be done very carefully, stage by stage, with 3 weeks gap in between each treatment. You can hear it fizz. That's what we want to hear, really. Fizz, fizz, fizz. Now, you never know what strange things you're going to find in the lake, and I've just stumbled across a spoon. What on earth is this doing? Well, it's meters away from a margin or the bridge, but yep, someone's lost their teaspoon. So yeah, there's another concentration of mussels in front of this rock here in this hole. This is a hole that's quite close to the kind of end of the island, the one that's nearest the bridge, and I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sure one of the reasons why we've got such a fantastic population of freshwater mussels now here, I mean we've got thousands of them, is the annual treatment of lime Chaux-Vif that we've been doing you know, for the last 10 years now. Mussels need calcium from the lime in order to build their shells, and if there's not enough naturally available in the water, then they won't be able to grow well. And when we first took over this lake, the first drain down we saw, there was nothing. There was not a freshwater mussel in sight. Lots of dead ones. So we cleaned it out. Once we started treating with lime, the freshwater mussels were back within a couple of years, and they have been coming on leaps and bounds ever since. Freshwater mussels filter our water, and they're also a good indicator of good quality water to start with. Big carp will absolutely eat a relatively small mussel because you know, they'd absolutely love them, but once they get to a certain size, you know, they just can't get them because they're really quite robust. Oh, here we go. So that red thing is a little bloodworm. When we were just woken him up, he was having a lovely sleep there. That is why carp will go to a lot of time and trouble to dig through really hard substrate, and this is why the carp in this lake, the mouths are super hard, and this is why we see these holes that weren't there just appear really. Small estate lakes such as this are incredibly feature rich. They're complicated and they're changing all of the time. During this drain down, I've seen features that I've never seen before, and the features that I thought I knew and understood, well, some of them there and some of them are not. So you've really got to keep on it. If you're, you know, if you've got a syndicate water that you've been fishing a few years, then you know, the game does not stay the same. Carp are always changing their environment. They're re-sculpting it to their needs.